The format for the evening is that we will draw by lottery the names of 5 candidates to come forward into the hot seats to discuss a question, as you would in a city council meeting. The question for the group will also be chosen by lottery, so Mark can't say that I picked the hardest question for him.
That was good work. You still will.
I could. There will be 4 groups of 5 candidates. We have a timekeeper here in the front. The purpose of using this format for people who haven't been here before is that we're, in a sense, simulating having a conversation as you would in city council chamber during a meeting. Each group will have 12 minutes to discuss their question and then return to their seats. We'll have 2 rounds of these little discussions. And after the second round of the group discussions, each of you will get 1 minute to make a closing statement. And there we are. So we're going to start with the first group. We do everything democratically here. Okay, so. So, Ron Benjamin, Adrienne Musgrave, Olivia D'Ambrosio, Sean Tierney, that's 4, and Gwen Volmar, if you want to come down in the front. And then, okay, that's one of yours, right? Oh, okay. All righty. Got my folder. Even a little more. Yeah, well, once we get ourselves.
Good evening. My name is Elena Sokolow-Kaufman, and I'm the Managing Director of the Cambridge Nonprofit Coalition. So, number 4. What are your plans to ensure that the diverse constituencies, race, ethnicity, socioeconomic status of Cambridge are engaged in City of Cambridge decision-making?
Thank you. You want to repeat it? Come here. It's the microphone.
Okay, I'll get really close. All right. Repeating the question. Is this better? Yes. Sorry about that. What are your plans to ensure that the diverse constituencies of Cambridge, race, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, are engaged in City of Cambridge decision-making?
So you need a microphone. And just whoever wants to start can start, and then pass it around, and the timer starts now.
Hi, my name's Adrienne Musgrave. Can I stand? Or I'll sit here. Can I stand? My name's Adrienne Musgrave, and I'm a candidate for Cambridge City Council, and I'm respectfully asking for your #1 vote. I'm so happy to be here. As everyone in the nonprofit world knows, it's nonprofits who pick up where government leaves off. So it's incredibly important that the work that you do here. I think the question is about engagement. And this is something that is really challenging for us as a city because we welcome so many people into our community. One of the things that I think that we should do, and it's really emblematic of Cambridge, where we have a good program and we need to expand it. We need to do a lot more with it. So we have a community engagement team. Right now there are 9 individuals with language and cultural backgrounds, but they're only, this is only a part-time position. And so they're only funded hourly, and they only work 10 to 12 hours per week. I believe we need to fund these positions at the full-time level, and I believe we need to add additional training so that these individuals know everything about our city, and they can act as a conduit between what our city is doing and the needs of all of our residents who may not be involved because of a multitude of reasons. The privilege of time is probably one of the biggest ones. So I think that this is something that wouldn't be a huge burden on our budget. It's something that we're already doing and could pay huge dividends by integrating these folks into more policy making, which I know is happening, but needs to happen on a bigger level, or programming. And then creating direct connections between what our liaisons are hearing to our city council, and also what they're hearing to our school committee, and also among our neighborhood groups as well. I have been to many, many neighborhood groups and many of these meetings, and I often not just see the same kind of person, but the same people. And I think by investing in this liaison group, we can do a lot by bringing more people into our community conversations. Again, my name is Adrienne Musgrave, and if you have any additional questions for me, I know that there's going to be a lot discussed tonight, but please feel free to reach out to me at hi@voteadrienne.com.
Okay, let's move on. It's not a campaign.
Well, hello, Cambridge, and particularly hello, seniors. I want to thank Elaine and all the others who made this possible this evening. I am Ronald Benjamin. A little bit about me, and I'll answer the question. I was born in 1971 in the country that
We can't do this. I don't mean to be a pain in the butt, but the timetables we have, if you introduce yourself and everybody else does the same thing, we don't get to the issues. And we
I will
really
respond
want
to
to
the
get
question
to the issues. You
within
have
the
a
time.
minute at the end where you get to say anything that you want. Thank you.
All right. So who I am, I'm about one thing, community. We no longer have a community in Cambridge. And how I'm going to answer this question to resolve awareness and diversity and bring the low-income folks to connect to those who have is one program that I have that the city in some ways using. It's called Job Preference for those who lives in Cambridge. If you apply for a city job, you should get job preference, particularly jobs related to work departments. A lot of city jobs are available for those that live in Cambridge, but yet to get these jobs is very hard because you got people from all over applying for these same jobs. So one way to answer that question and deal with this issue of diversity is to create real jobs. I'm all for the increase of minimum wage, but minimum wage alone is not sufficient to allow those who have no money to pay for their household expenses. Real jobs for real people by having job preference living in the city. That's my plan.
Just to go back and clarify the question, it's engaging diversities of populations in public policy issues in Cambridge decision making. So it's reaching out. I just wanted to say it again. I think we got a little bit off. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, and I'll also sort of chat with my mock city council team up here. I will only say that my name is Olivia D'Ambrosio. Okay, so I think that something that would actually really change the landscape of who's making decisions in the city of Cambridge is if this process was much more democratic and available to a wider range of people, by which I mean running for the city council shouldn't be predicated on having the privileges of time, money, and other sort of space in your life that allows you to raise $25,000 every other year and be able to knock on doors all day and all night. We need to have a publicly funded campaign finance system, and we need to have an election system that allows people to meet candidates at different times of the day and night in different locations of the city, so that both the people running for office and the people voting are representing a wider range of the constituents in the city, thereby making both the people making it onto the council and the people choosing them a broader range of citizens. Thoughts?
Hi everyone, my name is Gwen Volmar. Thank you for coming tonight. I will just share with you that as I have been going around, I'll stand. As I've been going around Cambridge, one of the most satisfying things that I do with my time is to literally go door to door and personally deliver the message that something is happening in Cambridge and you should care about it. One of the most frustrating things that I do when I encounter some people whose doors I knock on is they say, I'm sorry, I can't vote for you because A and B and C. Those reasons are usually I'm not a citizen or am here because I'm undocumented and I feel safe here. So I want to talk about this question in the most literal way possible, and that is to include people in our decision making by literally giving them the right to help us make decisions. That is extending the right to vote to non-citizens and to people who are here illegally, especially bringing to them the kinds of decisions that we make in their neighborhood. So bringing our city council meetings to local neighborhoods, to local senior centers or community centers so that people can actually be part of the decision-making process and, like I said, to literally invite them to the table. Thanks very much.
Hi, good evening. My name's Sean Tierney, first-time candidate for City Council. I grew up in this community. I've been in Cambridge for 32 years, and many of the reasons why I'm running is because I feel that I have a connection to a lot of diverse communities throughout the city. Today, I still volunteer with the football team, and I've been saying at these forums, no matter what your view of football may be, and I most likely agree with you, it's a community that brought a lot of diversity into my life at a very early age. And to me, it feels like home, and that's why I'm still involved and a part of that community as well. And I think I'm someone who, it's about showing up as a city councilor and being at things and showing people that you care and carrying the message of what's happening on Monday nights back to the rest of the community. And I think I have a proven record of doing that, not only with my volunteer work, but also just all the connections that I have to many different folks throughout the city. In my campaign, I have no paid political staff. It's all volunteer-based. And a lot of folks who've been involved in my campaign are so surprised about all the issues that are happening in our own city and can't believe that they've never had a voice or an opportunity to dig into these issues. And I think my campaign and frankly, the type of person that I am and how I was raised by this community would make me a good advocate by going back to those communities that have been historically underserved and be a voice for them at City Hall. And I think that's the main thing that City Council can do is be a person who's in the community at all times.
Would you see that there would be specific things that you might offer to different communities in terms of different methods of communication or bringing people together because of cultural influences or limitations?
I think one of the challenges when we think about diverse communities here is everyone is really limited by time. And one of the things I think we should do as far as a vehicle is making sure that our community and youth centers are really centers of the neighborhood and where all families and kids and even residents who live nearby can come and get information on whatever they might need, and it really would be that hub of community. I know that when I've spoken with a lot of folks who've grown up in Cambridge, particularly some of our young men, they really loved the Moses Youth Center. It was a place where they came together, where they got mentoring, and I would like to see that model continue, and I would like us to invest in organizations, our youth centers and other nonprofits that might be able to stay open until 9 or 9:30 to create a safe space where kids and families can come and connect and information can pass through these vehicles.
And I guess I'll give an example based on an issue that we're all very familiar with here, and certainly all the candidates are, is on the issue of bike lanes. And that was an issue that a lot of folks felt like there wasn't enough civic engagement, inclusion, and outreach. And one of the things that I've proposed is put together a transportation working group. So you bring folks from across the city, whether it's people who are involved in transportation issues, or if they are the Council on Aging, you get the fire department, the police department, and you reach out to communities and have them be a part of working group. And what their responsibility would not be not just to look at what happened with the implementation, but also to disseminate information to their constituencies. So we could apply that to other public policy issues where you have a working group of folks who are represented from different parts of the city, and their main responsibility is not just the public policy issue, but reaching out to the constituency group and saying, here's what I learned at the meeting, and here's when the next public meeting is for you to comment on it. Because that's part of the issue, I think, is communication and the publication of when these meetings are happening and what's going on.
So one way to have more voice of diversity on the council is very simple. You vote for me. It's that simple. Those folks that live in North Cambridge, you know what I'm talking about, right? 362 towers, 364 is that simple. You guys have no voice over there. I mean, you vote for me, I'll make sure I represent you on the council. It's that simple.
So when I first started campaigning, I had the idea that maybe a lot of people have, and that is that, oh, you set up a table outside of Market Basket, and you could hand out some flyers and things. And one of the first lessons I learned was, you don't wait for your voters to come to you. You go to where they are, right? If you want people to know what you have to say, you have to meet them where they are. And that means that people who didn't get the message about the bike lanes, but another group swears that they flyered every single door, right? We can't let that kind of thing happen. Messages have to come out by text message, they have to come out by email, they have to come out door to door, they have to come out by phone call. Whatever it is that works for that community, that that person has indicated is their preferred method of communication, that's the one that we should use. There's no excuse for us delivering the message to the people who need to know it.
Thank you for doing this. And now we did the 12 minutes, so we're going to switch back and bring down another group. Mayor Simmons, Richard Harding, Brian Sutton, Jeff Santos. Mark McGovern. Okay, here we go. Do I have to separate? You're separated. How much more can I separate you? Okay. Cambridge is the hub of innovation and home to 471 millionaires. Cambridge also has a poverty rate that is higher than the state at 14%. The poverty rate for female single-parent households is over 32%. For female single-parent households with children under 5 years old, it's 47% of these households live in poverty. Persistent poverty among children is a significant concern as it is a predictor for negative life outcomes. According to the recently completed Cambridge Community Needs Assessment, 43% of the Cambridge population is financially insecure, that is, having incomes above the federal poverty line, but struggling to pay increasingly high rental costs and maintain other basic needs. What role can the City Council and the city play in addressing the income insecurity facing these Cambridge individuals and families?
Good evening, and thank you for that question. I'm E. Denise Simmons, and I'm currently serving as your mayor. When we talk about income insecurity, we know that it's a grave, grave problem in our city, and so I'm going to talk just briefly about one thing that I've done this year. In July of 2018, our governor has signed into law the Comparable Wage Act. And under the Comparable Wage Act, it says that a woman will get paid equal to a man doing the same job. That goes into law next year. So I said, that's a great thing, but why wait till next year? And so this year, I garnered a number of people together to work on what I call pathways to prosperity for women. I know the women in this room and the men who have wives and daughters, et cetera, and so forth, want to make sure that their wives, daughters are paid fairly. I know myself, and for my children, they didn't go and ask for a job and say, and, oh, by the way, pay me less. And so I look forward to continuing that work on the city council. So one of the first things that we did is we do a dashboard. And through that dashboard, you can look. It's forward-facing and back-facing. You can look and see what a woman is getting paid by race and gender, by department, by age, by longevity. What we then do is we go to each department and we start to work with them to say, how are you going to change that for each of these women? How are you going to make sure they're paid first equally? And then how are you going to be sure that they have an opportunity to go up the scale? How can they continue to make more money so that they will not be destitute, impoverished? Because we all know that when a family suffers because they have income insecurity, it really impacts the whole community. So I look forward to continuing this work with people like Eva Martin Blythe at the YWCA and CEOC and our business owners. I did not mention that when we started this program, we got over 100 companies in Cambridge as early adopters that say they will share their, look at their data, share their data, and they will find policies, practices, and procedures to even the playing field.
Thank you. As scary as the percentages that Elaine mentioned, it's actually worse. When I came on the city council in 2014, the city had just completed a poverty study using the federal guidelines for poverty as their benchmark. And if anyone knows those guidelines, they're absurdly low. If you're a family of four making over $24,500 a year, congratulations, you're not poor. Try doing that, living on that in Cambridge. So I said, we got to figure out does it really cost to live here? And so at that time, David Myer was the mayor, and I asked him to appoint myself and Mayor Simmons, then Councilor Simmons co-chaired the Income Insecurity Committee. Many of you in this room were part of that committee. And we looked at what does it really cost to live in Cambridge to pay your rent, your utilities, and your food. That's it. Family of four needs to make a minimum of $108,000. So there is a huge gap between what the federal government says people need to live on and what you actually need to live in the city of Cambridge. So one thing we can do, getting back to that question, one thing we can do is we can start using the Cambridge Security Standard when we're determining who qualifies for programs in our city. I've been in conversations with the city manager and the superintendent of schools to expand who gets free breakfast and lunch in our schools, right? Because we should be using our standard to make sure kids are getting fed in our schools. Our fuel assistance program, same thing, right? A Cambridge community standard to make sure that we are capturing a broader range of people struggling with income insecurity in Cambridge. But it's also a long-term issue. It's about early childhood education. It's about housing. It's about mental health services. It's about job equity. It's about not just a $15 minimum wage, but even higher than that. Right? Because we have to not only make sure that we're helping people today who are struggling, but we have to make sure that we're building a foundation to help people moving forward. This has been a focus of my work for the 4 years on the council and as my 25 years as a social worker in this community. And I will continue to fight for these issues and work on these issues, and I'll certainly talk more if there's time.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Jeff Santos, first-time candidate. You may know me as a talk show host. I built the only progressive independent talk station, AM 1510, from 2008 to 2015. 2013, when investors pulled out, I continue to do my show because I believe in a progressive, populist agenda in the way of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. So what does that mean for the questions that you're asking? Well, let's just see. If we are going to build a better Cambridge, I know there's a group that's by that name as well, we're going to have to fight the power. I mentioned this last week. If anybody's a Chuck D fan in here, the rap band, Public Enemy. And who's the power? So think about it, folks. If you're looking around the room today, I don't know if there are power brokers in here or not, but there are wealthy people who come in here, develop property, and then they hire people who are, in some cases, non-union, or if they are union, they're not from Cambridge. So let me just make it clear. One of the things we need to think about here is if you build locally in Cambridge, you should hire locally in Cambridge. I don't know how many of you go around, you see a lot of license plates in New Hampshire and other parts of New England who come in here as part of construction crews and so forth. We can do better if we put the pedal to the metal. We ask people who come in here, who have wealth, who have obviously the ability to build homes, to say, look, you're going to have to become part of the community. If you have 14% poverty rate, then what are we going to do to have that? If you're going to come in, then we're going to demand things from you. Perfect point was with the idea where I live across the street on 3rd Street, the MIT Volpe Center. Okay, so we're moving forward with that. Well, as opposed to moving forward without something that's coming back, that really means a lot. So if you're 1.2 million is your average house in Cambridge, 600,000 for a condo, then you need to be able to pull together an avenue to get people to stay here because they're leaving. They're leaving in droves. Some even go to New Hampshire. The fact is that a rent-to-own policy is just one of the things that I'm offering. You can go to santosforcitycouncil.com. And we need to put pressure. There's endowments from MIT and Harvard. You can go to my Facebook page. We have a spot on that, the elephant in the room. And the fact is that we need to be able to put pressure on these folks. You can't come in here, take all the public elements that we have from MBTA and everything else, and not be able to put a position available to people who want to work. Secondly, on the rent-to-own...
Jeff, I'm going to ask you to wrap up a little because we have
fine.
2 more people and we're moving on time.
10 seconds. Rent-to-own, simple as that. If you qualify to rent $2,000 to $2,500 a month, that's the 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom average. You should then be able, if you're a good citizen, you pay your rent on time, to be able to own that unit. That gives people a chance to stay. Now all of a sudden the middle class says, well, I can actually own in Cambridge. I'll stay in Cambridge. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for having us. And I want to thank CEOC for this. You know, I'm a kid who grew up in Washington, up to Newtown Court in public housing on the assistance of organizations like you, and my dad actually worked for CEOC in the late 70s. You know, this is an issue that's near and dear to me. I have a young daughter who will be 20 next month who's a junior at UMass Amherst, and I'm waiting for the day when she comes home and enters a job field and she smashes the glass ceiling. She's bright, she's fierce, and she's ready to take on the world. So as I hopefully join the city council, I look to make sure that gender equity is at the top of the priorities. I know the mayor's been doing some work. She and I have done some work at the school committee level to make sure that some of the secretaries who were there were women, were getting paid at a pace that was necessary to make sure that not that we said what we were going to do, but we did what we were going to do around paying our women the right amount of money, even though people did not agree with us. I'd also say that this race is about connecting the vulnerable to the powerful. For too long, we've seen folks in City Hall on different levels not relating to the people that they're elected to serve. Looking at these numbers that you put in the folder there, they're astounding. And I think that it's high time that you elect city councilors who are qualified, uniquely qualified, to understand the plight of the people that they're serving. I grew up in public housing. I had no choice. We were poor, but we were proud, and we understood that we had to depend on our community to get along. I think that we have to understand that we live in the most innovative square mile in the world. In the world. And it's a tragedy that that innovation, that jewel is not connected more to the neighborhoods, that they're building and pillaging our neighborhoods without giving us our proper due back in community benefits. The rules of engagement will change should I be elected to the city council. I'm the only city council candidate who sued a developer, and I'm ready to help you and your family maintain your status, maintain your respectful position in the city if I'm elected to the city council. And I thank you for listening to me.
Hello, my name's Brian Sutton, and I grew up in poverty. Right now I'm an engineer, full-time engineer, and sip on my paper. What I learned was that it's a normal human characteristic to want to help each other. That's why there's so many volunteers on the local level. We live in a country with incredibly corrosive corruption in our government. There is such a pressure that is forcing the people who are already wealthy to stay wealthy and the people who aren't to get even poorer. And what I propose, and even at the local level, and this isn't my opinion, so this is based on a poll of several hundred people in Cambridge, 74% of the people are concerned about the amount of money spent on local elections. 66% in Cambridge think that there is influence from the money donated to the local elections. And I propose publicly funded elections. Seattle does it, and maybe people don't understand exactly how it works. So Seattle has vouchers. The only way they give the vouchers to all the citizens. The citizens pick and choose who they like to give the vouchers to. You only get the vouchers if you only take very small donations. In Seattle, this year they started doing it, and only a quarter of the people decided to try to go for the vouchers. Every single one of those people won their primaries in their districts and are moving on to the general election. This is a successful way to do government, and that's how I propose we do it in Cambridge. I'm Brian Sutton. Thank you.
Can I just say one thing? We talked earlier, and I know the last question talked about access to City Hall. You have to understand that in order to change the policies, you have to change the people sometimes. That's how it works. This isn't a game where elections don't have consequences. Elections have consequences. So you have to think about progressive people who you know and trust that
Richard,
are going to
Richard,
make sure.
Wrap it up.
I thought it was
We're
over.
out of time. No, we're out of
To
time.
make sure that they represent you in City Hall.
No, are we done?
You're done? We're going to do another round of 4 questions.
I mean, we can all break the rules.
No, we're out of time, though. We have the times out. That's all right. Okay, next group. Dennis Carlone, Tim Toomey, Alana Mallon, Nadia Okamoto, and Quentin Zondervan.
You were just getting warmed up. I'm sorry? You were just getting warmed up. I know. I don't know how the timing works. I guess there's not an individual time limit. The one question and then the group question. You can change. Yeah. I like that.
Give them a- I just want to remind you, it's 12 minutes for the group, so it would be nice if people kind of did 2 minutes, because your previous peers acted badly, and now you all have to be disciplined. You like that? I just wanted to acknowledge that all those other people.
Well, I'm going to ask you. Not working? All right. All right. I'm going to ask you to resist the temptation to stand up. All right? Okay? If you spend any time at City Council. If you've spent any time at City Councils really do talk to each other. And that's what we're trying to get you all to do, to actually have a dialogue with one another. Okay, so stand, sit, but look at each other. Look at us and look at one another. All right. This headline caught my eye. Anger, chaos erupt at Newark Council meeting over housing. Quote, throughout the night, residents vented their frustrations with the lack of low-income housing in the city and decried plans to allow buildings near the city's riverfront to tower as high as 40 stories and others in the ironbound section to reach 12 stories. So one of the councilors who backed this proposed density and height increase said what currently exists now are vacant properties that are being used for parking lots. We are trying to build density responsibly. Now, we've all been to city council, BZA, and other meetings where residents have expressed opposition to building affordable housing based on concerns about density, height, traffic, parking, neighborhood change, and the planning and approval process for new development. At one of the meetings to discuss the redevelopment of Vale Court, abutters asked the city to consider how they would be impacted by buildings that are too high, and they pointed to Temple Place, which is 5 stories. The abutters said their views would be obstructed, they would lose the sun, and the character of the entire neighborhood would be changed. So what is neighborhood character? Can you define it? Is the idea of preserving neighborhood character a legitimate reason for opposing increased housing density? And is it possible to build density responsibly in an already dense city like Cambridge?
So housing affordability is my top priority, and I know that many of us will stand up and say that, but for me, my passion for preserving economic diversity comes from a really personal place. I grew up experiencing housing instability. I grew up in a single-family home. I'm the oldest of 3 girls. We escaped domestic violence when I was a younger age, and we're still working with the legal repercussions of it. And for me, when I take that own experience, but I also listen and I go around the city and I talk to residents, what I continue to hear is that it's not just a need for more affordable units, as you're saying. It's a need for cultivating affordable neighborhoods and a need for the experience of what it's like to be housing unstable or to be low income to be supported. Right now, Cambridge does not have the infrastructure to be supporting the rapid population growth. And I think that when it comes to preserving neighborhood character, what we have to think about is, do we as a city have the infrastructure to support more people on the streets? Do we have the infrastructures to be able to support more foot traffic to our stores? And are we able to cultivate affordable neighborhoods by continuing to support and promote owner-operated businesses on the street? I think that for us, we have a lot more opportunity to take the housing we are working with right now and push for there to be more inclusionary zoning, especially at the middle income level, to preserve this economic diversity and promote it further. I think that when it comes to density, yes, we are a dense city, and yes, we're continuing to be pushed to be denser as more companies grow. Companies are wanting to come in, and that's part of the side effect of being in the most innovative square mile, as it's been said. And I think that when it comes to prioritizing neighborhood character, yes, that's important, but it's also important that we support residents of Cambridge to make sure that they have housing. And at the end of the day, we need more housing, but we cannot be building as fast as we are now. And so that's my response. I think that it is very case-by-case basis, and there are neighborhoods that should be not be built further, and then there are neighborhoods where that might be more appropriate, for example, with Kendall Square and some of the need for more housing there.
Good evening, Jim Toomey, and I think if you've been watching the council meetings in the past few years, you know that my big platform is that every neighborhood of the city of Cambridge should be sharing and providing affordable housing, that no area of the city should be off limits as it is now. And if you saw what I proposed a couple of months ago, we talk about density. I live in the densest part of the city, East Cambridge, and the port is the densest parts. And several times I've been under attack by some of my neighbors because I supported affordable housing in those dense areas where people felt that we were overburdened with affordable housing. But I said, we have to provide this, and I'm going to continue to fight to provide that. So they talk about density and where we can put housing. And they say housing should be in areas where there's open space, where there's commercial space, where there's mass transit. If you remember a couple months ago, I proposed that the city just enter a conversation with Lesley College and the Harvard Divinity School, which were up for sale. The Harvard Divinity School, and Lesley College owns part of that, to have a discussion to see, is it possible that we could put some affordable units on that site? You see how big that site is. open space. You got the Cambridge Commons, you got the Charles River down the street, Harvard Square with all the retail, Harvard Square Station, the Red Line for mass transit. An ideal location to at least have a conversation to see how do we do this? How do we ensure that every part of the city shares in providing affordable housing? Well, the personal attacks and emails that I got from residents of that area was unprecedented. It was like no discussion at all. We have our certain unique characteristics up here, and no one else is going to change that. And I think that's wrong. I think we have to look at some of those properties to say, how do we convert them into single-room occupants to welcome our refugees, to welcome the immigrants, to welcome all people, so that every part of the city shares in that affordable housing. We have to think out of the box, and I'm trying to encourage that with my colleagues in the city administration. But when just to propose to have a discussion was like, how dare you think that you can put affordable housing in my neighborhood? That is wrong, and that's the kind of culture we have to change in the city.
Hi everyone, my name is Alana Mallon. I am a first-time candidate for Cambridge City Council. There was a report out this week by Freddie Mac saying that affordable housing in this country has dropped over 60% in the last 6 years. This is a nationwide problem, and it is not just a problem that exists here in Cambridge. As somebody who shares a workspace with the Cambridge Economic Commission, I see every day people coming in needing housing, needing safe housing, victims of domestic violence needing safe, affordable housing for them and their families. We cannot prioritize shadows over people in this town. And communities, you asked about what makes a community. The people make the community. Making sure that we have neighborhoods that are connected to one another and residents who are connected to one another. As Tim said, we cannot make sure that affordable housing is happening in one neighborhood or two neighborhoods. It needs to be spread across the city to make sure that kids can go to their neighborhood schools, to make sure that families are feeling connected, to make sure that people are living near transit. We have an opportunity right now. We're going to have 3 new city councilors. 30% of our city council is going to change, and I am asking you for your #1 vote because I will be fighting for density, but also for creating that neighborhood experience and making sure that those who are most vulnerable in our communities are getting the housing that they need to be stable and be successful.
Hi, I'm Dennis Carlone. I've been a councilor for 2 terms. I'm an architect, urban designer. I built 2,000 mixed-income unit developments. I feel I know housing intimately and how to put it together. Cambridge is, a couple of facts. Cambridge is the 10th densest city in the United States now. Affordable housing developers never build over 6 stories in height, sometimes 7. Never build over 7 stories in height, sometimes 6. And the reason is when you build over that height, the cost of the housing increases 50% for fire codes, for egress, all those reasons. So in fact, when you build above it, you have to go to 11 to 12 stories to compensate for that height so that the height is paid for. So we're not talking about 6 or 7 versus 7 or 8. We're talking about 11 and 12 and above, like what's going to happen in Central Square where you're going to get a 200-foot tower because the developer paid too much for the land. So what do? You do build new housing throughout the city. No question about it, where you can. The city has parking lots. We can put parking below grade, build on top. That's expensive, but we own the land. That's the most expensive thing. Number 2, there's a state bill that I spoke in favor of just this past week. It's referred to as TOPA, Tenants' Opportunity to Purchase Apartments. Jeff Santos alluded to it. And what that is when any building 3 units and above becomes on the market, the tenants have a right to offer a fair market value, whatever the owner puts it on the market. The city and state will help subsidize those tenants to maintain it as a low-income co-op. And this sounds like a pipe dream. However, Washington, D.C. has done this for 30 years and have created 10,000 units of low-income co-op housing. So we have to look at new construction and we have to look at existing buildings. We're never going to build enough new buildings to make the difference. It's 80% market, 20% affordable. We have to hit the existing buildings. Thank you very much.
Thank you. My name is Quentin Zondervan. I was born in the Netherlands in Europe and grew up in Suriname in South America. The Netherlands is one of the densest countries on earth. And I want to go back to what Nadia mentioned, which is that we don't have the infrastructure to support the kind of density that we are building. The neighborhood is not just the housing, it's also the roads and the transportation infrastructure. You need parks, you need schools. There's a lot more to it than just piling on housing. So I don't think it's as simple as saying, are you for density or against density? We need to do smart development. I also want to point out that in the United States, we have more vacant homes than we have homeless people. So to cast this as a question of, can we add enough housing is also a little bit off because we already have lots of housing that's underutilized. Even in Cambridge, we have vacant buildings that are not being utilized properly. So we need to do something about those aspects as well, not just prioritize building more and more and more. And that has impacts on the neighborhoods as well and on the people who are already living here who don't see the benefits of that. I published an article in the Cambridge Day a couple of months ago showing that over the last 20 years, we've added 10,000 units of housing in Cambridge. That's a 25% increase. And it's been mostly luxury priced housing, 90%. So what that does is all the rents continue to go up over that time span. And what we're seeing is that middle income families are declining in Cambridge and high income families are increasing. So just prioritizing construction of new housing does not, in fact, address the affordable housing crisis in Cambridge.
I also wanted to just respond to something Tim Toomey was saying is about working with the institutions here. I think that this next term is a huge opportunity to work with Harvard, MIT, and Lesley, especially when it comes to housing. We're already seeing this mobilization happening almost in tangent with the Volpe building as well, for there to be more of the demand for graduate student housing to be met. Right now, over 55% of graduate students live off campus, and by providing more housing options for graduate students, you can actually open up upwards of 10,000 units to be longer term solutions for Cambridge families, which are currently short-term rentals. And I think that there's opportunities to work with the institutions here, both when it comes to access to education equity, resources and technological resources, but also real estate planning. And I think that's something we can explore, especially with the graduate students right now.
Hello, hello?
Okay. Are we focused? Yes. All right. I love to talk about HUD Secretary Dr. Ben Carson. Following his listening tour of public housing in 4 cities, HUD Secretary Ben Carson made this observation. When people first came up with the concept of public housing, I don't think they were bad people, but I don't think they realized the implications of simply maintaining people in a public housing setting. Not just year after year, but generation after generation, basically killing the drive that people have to succeed. We can only provide enough public housing or affordable housing for about a quarter of the people who need it. If we can keep those people moving through, then we can take care of some of the backlog. Now, Secretary Carson did not come to Cambridge, so he may not know what it costs to find housing of your own in a market where a 1-bedroom apartment is affordable only to people who have a gross household income of $100,000. Now, the Cambridge Housing Authority has been conducting interviews with higher earning public housing households who have incomes over 120% of area median income. So these are middle income families who can't afford to move out of CHA housing. You all don't usually think of middle income families as living in public housing, but they do. And here's what you need to know about these families. There are multiple workers living under the same roof. The average household size is 3.8. The average individual income per job is about $46,000. The average length of stay in their housing unit is about 9 years. 100% of these households are multi-generational, which means people are moving in and out. And 72% of these households identify as immigrants. So what policies and programs would you put in place to help these middle-income families keep moving through the city's housing system?
Hi, everyone. My name's Jan Devereaux, and I'm a first-term counselor, and I've been a member of the Housing Committee this term, as well as a member of the Human Service and Veterans Committee. So I've talked about a lot of these issues at the council. And I'm going to try to talk to my colleagues here without turning my back to you. Well, I guess the way you pose the question makes me wonder, is keeping people moving through the system what we want to do? I mean, that you were setting that up as a Ben Carson thing. Yeah, a trick question, because I don't really think that is. And a lot of what you're describing, to me, sounds like a community. And we talk a lot about how to build community and maintain community in an environment where we have a lot of income insecurity, a lot of transient because people are being displaced. So that if you have housing that is secure on some level, and particularly the multi-generational, as a mother of 3 children who have left Cambridge for the West Coast in New York, I would love to be in a setting, frankly, where I could have a multi-generational experience. So I don't think the value that we're looking for is how to move them through, but it's how to make sure that people have housing that fits their needs. So middle income is the toughest nut to crack. When we had our Volpe conversation about zoning, the sort of one of the final sweeteners was for MIT to throw in 20 units of middle income housing, and that's great. But by contrast to the total number of housing units being created, which is about 1,400, it seems like a tiny percent. And my question, I actually had a meeting with CDD and the city manager and other staff, and I said, is there any way that this is going to work? Because to me, this sounds like it's not enough of a bridge. We talk about wanting to have a community that is reflective of everybody, and if you just have 20 middle income, to me that doesn't seem adequate. And the response I got was basically, middle-income families have other options. They don't necessarily want to live and pay that much rent for rent, not acquire equity. And the ownership is problematic because it's typically limited equity ownership. So basically, I didn't press on more middle-income housing. I don't know if that answered the question or not.
I'll just add to this that these households would like to move out of CHA housing. And so I'm really asking you to think about, is there a way to serve their needs? And it is a very tough. Yeah.
Thank you. So my name is Samuel Gebru. I'm a candidate for City Council. To answer your question, I think two things come to mind immediately. More is on my agenda on my website. But the first thing that I'll mention is with regards to why people live in public housing, one of the issues is not enough income. And so what I think about when you think about income inequality, economic inequality being the biggest issue in Cambridge, part of it is raising people's incomes. And so one thing that I propose on my website is to do what Rhode Island is doing. Governor Gina Raimondo has partnered with Microsoft New England, based in Cambridge, to have a statewide Computer Science for All initiative. She's making sure that every child in Rhode Island, K through 12, is learning age-appropriate computer science and 21st century skills. By 12th grade, not only are you college ready, you're career ready, you're life ready. You have the entry-level skills necessary to enter the innovation economy. If the entire state of Rhode Island can do this with a company based in Cambridge, there's no reason why we can't do it. And so that ensures that future generations, when you're talking about multi-generations, if I'm poor or if I'm on low income, if I'm on a fixed income, but if my kid has these 21st century opportunities, then they will be far better off than I am. So that's one thing, is creating pathways to high-paying jobs. Because we often complain, especially in the port, the jobs in Kendall Square do not come to Cambridge residents. And one of the reasons why is because we fail to prepare Cambridge residents for those jobs. The second thing that I'll comment on is home ownership. First-time homebuyer program in Cambridge is not that great. I would like to revive, or rather enhance the program. And I know that you have a lot of ideas on this, being on the Affordable Housing Trust. And so I want to find, again, pathways to home ownership. And the last thing I'll say is the number one way that people in this country measure their personal net worth is through home ownership, home equity. And I would like to ensure that we are providing people with those opportunities. And we have land to do it. We just need the political will to make it happen.
Thank you, and I think those are some good ideas from Sam. Can you hear me? I think that, you know, this is one of the major issues that is facing Cambridge in this election. The truth is that middle-income families are an endangered species in the city. When you talk about options, the options are, and I'll use my Aunt Jackie Green, who lived in Washington Elms for most of her life. Her option was to buy a two-family on the same income and pay less in Everett. That's a sad story. Unfortunately, the spatial displacement of certain populations in the city is a real problem. We have to think about this with intentionality if we're going to change it. Just imagine a city council that thinks as much about this particular issue as they think about bike lanes. Think about the energy that would be put into this exact issue. We have to stop always thinking about the things and start to pay more attention to the people that we are here to serve. And that's the biggest difference. You need people that understand this. I grew up in the projects. This was the life that we lived. We had to enjoy each other's company. We were poor, but we were proud. We had to think about how we were going to change our life predicament. The next thing I'd say is Ben Carson's an idiot. Let's just start there. He is incompetent. The other guy that occupies 1600 Pennsylvania Ave, he's incompetent. And so we don't, here in Cambridge, need them to save us. We have the resources, the talent, and the treasure. I think if I'm elected to the city council, I can help us have a better tomorrow than we have today around the issues of affordable housing.
Thank you, Richie. My name is Greg Morey, and I'm a lifetime Cambridge resident. And I go to church at St. Mary's over there, and my uncle's the director of the Cambridge Public Library. He was the director. But the issues are clear. The issues are jobs. My Uncle Joe, I mentioned my Uncle Joe Sakey because he worked for Franklin Roosevelt. And he wrote the Bill of Rights, the Bill of Rights of Franklin Roosevelt, that we have a right to have a job. Every kid needs to have a job in the city to get them off the street. The prevailing wage is that that's equal pay for women. Equal pay came from Franklin Roosevelt. The prevailing wage came from him, and housing projects came from Franklin Roosevelt. And Section 8 came from Franklin Roosevelt, so we have a lot to thank him for. Our most two vulnerable citizens are our elderly and our youth. And our population is growing. We need more beds at Uville Hospital, Neville Center. And we got so many people coming into this community, we need more class spaces. There's not enough class spaces for our kids. So I know that we need to build more classrooms and we need more teachers. That's clear. The Volpe site over there, they want 1,800 new units over there. But we can't fit 1,800 automobiles over there. That's for sure. So we support bike lanes, bike safety, and any great ideas that anybody has here. You know, we can use them. We put it in writing, and we'll discuss them. And we need food. And don't forget the Special Olympics. You know, we have special ed kids, you know, handicapped people, handicap ramps. There's all types of different issues in the city of Cambridge that need to be addressed. We need food. We need food. We need vegetables and food in our food pantries. The homeless people are begging for coffee in front of Dunkin' Donuts every day. Coffee and donuts and sandwiches. I support getting a coffee truck and getting them some coffee and donuts and getting some sandwiches to them. Just basic common sense ideas and working with all the food groups, the food pantries, the food housing people, just working together, getting along and getting things done, trying to improve lives for people. That makes common sense. GregMaury.com. I've got gorgeous Vicki Kennedy here backing me. I just want everybody to know that. Here we go.
Thank you. Jeff Santos again. Let me follow up on what I was talking about earlier and the idea of taking on the big guys. Yesterday I had the privilege of being endorsed by Bernie Sanders and Our Revolution with 5 other great people in this room. Fact is that Bernie Sanders has been a fighter. He's fought against big interests. Whether it was pharmaceutical companies, that's why he's pushing for single-payer health care. Whether it's the big private universities, that's why he's pushing for 4 years of public university. And against Wall Street. The reason I bring it up is that everything and every question you ask comes down to the fact is how much are we going to fight? I live in a building, 20-story building on 3rd Street. There are people that I know that are entrepreneurs trying to make it. I have my own business. And he wants to go from a 1-bedroom to a 2-bedroom. They won't let him. I don't know if it's the fact that it's agency related or if it's the landlord related, but somebody has to be able to step in for this one individual and others like him. And if city government and state government, obviously, and I agree with Mr. Harding on the caricature of Mr. Carson, but somebody's going to have to fight, and it's going to take a lot of people to do it. One of the things that I've said now in many of these public forums is that the advantage that I have is that I have a talk show, and I'm planning to keep the talk show. And what that does is it gives us a platform to fight and advocate. It's not going to be just Jeff Santos who's going to make things change, but it's going to be people in this room. It's going to be people across this city. And you will have your platform to be able to fight. If we can't do that, folks, we can come up with a lot of ideas, and we have seen some great ideas over the last couple of terms. Sometimes they don't get through. Sometimes it's 6-3, sometimes it's 5-4, the way a progressive wants to put it. But the fact is that if we don't start fighting and bring together coalitions, then we're never going to be able to have affordable housing for a lot of people in this city. Thank you.
Oh, you're paying attention. All right. That was good. I wasn't paying attention. Thank you. What role do you believe the nonprofit sector in Cambridge plays in making Cambridge a strong, vibrant, and welcoming community?
All right, I'm Ronald Benjamin again, and to answer this question, I will speak on what I've experienced since last May 2016 when I started this campaign. I started this campaign because of one thing, to serve those who does not have a voice on the council. I started at 364 and 362. During that time, we met twice a month. And during those meetings, that's when I discovered the work of CEOC. And what does CEOC does? Give those people at least a chance to vent their issues and their problems. But yet there's a greater need for these people to be represented in the council. So nonprofit organization does or can do or have the possibility to transform the current state of our city. My vision is clear, to have one community in Cambridge, to connect the poor and the rich. In North Cambridge, in the port, we don't have any more community. I'm here standing to bring back community. And I will continue on the work that CEOC is doing, but there's more that needs to be done to fight for the needs of these people. We need better housing care for them. So that's the fight I want to stand. I don't have a lot of time to explain the details, but I've been doing the work since last May. We had some great success, and I will continue to do that.
Hi, everyone. My name is Gwen Vollmer again. I will share with you, and I hope there are others in the room who feel called to the carpet by the nonprofits who are in this space with us. They are often the ones who are, I think, chastising the city government about the things that city government should be doing and is not yet doing. We have a number of churches in this city who are putting up undocumented immigrants. That's the kind of thing that the city should be doing. We have a number of organizations that are collecting information and synthesizing that information and being dynamic and responsive in the way that the city should be doing. It is those organizations that are really far and away further than the city ever has been on collecting ideas, collecting information, making suggestions, and taking actions. So I look to the organizations in this city, including the churches. There are a number of people in my congregation who are being fed and housed by the church. That's the responsibility of the city. I look to these organizations to see what we should be doing, because those are the things that are absolutely our responsibility as a citizenry, and not just if we happen to be lucky enough to have some organizations who live near us who care about these citizens as much as we all should be. So I feel like that is their role, is to keep us honest, to keep us doing the things that we should be doing and pushing us continually further toward where we should be going. Thanks very much. Gwen Vollmer again.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sambal. I got lipstick on the mic. Sorry. My name is Sambal Siddiqui. I am a Cambridge resident. I grew up in the Range Towers and Roosevelt Towers. I'm a public interest attorney by day. So I work at a nonprofit. I'm also on the board of Cambridge School Volunteers, which is why I was late. I was at a board meeting. So nonprofits play such a critical role. I know because I've experienced so many of the resources that Cambridge offers. The Cambridge School Volunteers is a member of the nonprofit coalition. So I'm going to use that as a starting point. Something they're doing right now is something called corporate mentoring programs. Each student in the 7th grade has a net pal. A net pal is someone who works in our industry in Kendall, in the science departments, in the tech companies, and we're making sure that each of these young students starts early and has mentors, because you can't be what you can't see. And I think a big part of of our low income and students of color being successful is so that we have these partnerships. So my priority is going to be making sure that these partnerships, using a data-driven approach, are as successful as they are. I'm an example, but I know tons of my friends who weren't as successful. And there are reasons for that. There's a lot of connecting the dots. Our nonprofits provide a critical role in connecting these dots. So we have to make sure that they are well funded, that they have the resources they need to keep going. So that I think they really make this city what the city is, and it really they really play a huge role in making our communities as successful as they can be.
Hi, my name is Olivia D'Ambrosio. I did not stand up during the last round because I endeavored to listen to the format in which we were invited to participate, and I endeavored to participate in it thusly. I'm bringing this up only because listening is a real skill, and it is one becoming a civil servant. And while I certainly understand why my colleagues stood up to be able to be seen and heard, if you do want to think of this as a city council-like setting, look at how people listen, because those are the candidates who will listen to your public comment when you speak. Okay, about nonprofits. I run one. I founded it when I was about 28 years old. I started it with $10,000, and now it has an operating budget of $100,000. This is of note not only because I have the skills to grow something in that way, but because in particular it's an arts nonprofit. And $100,000, my own organization, $100,000 is actually more money than we currently allocate to the entire arts grants funding program in this city. We give $70,000 to the arts grants funding program. My one tiny organization has an operating budget above that amount. Why is this an issue? Because back in the day, the arts used to be what kept powerful people in check. The king and the queen were kept in check by the court jester, and the entire community would go to the theater on Saturday in the Globe, the powerful and the poor, and they would watch the players on the stage reflect back to them their life. Arts have become a fringe thing for elite people only, and that is a problem. If the arts can be restored to being something that creates community and that gives powerless people a voice, it will make Cambridge stronger. I'm the only arts-focused candidate. I'm the only one with a skill set in the arts, and I endeavor to make the arts a community-building force, and once again, a space where the voiceless have a space to speak.
I'm going to stand again. Again, I'm Sean Tierney. One thing I failed to mention earlier was that I'm the research director for the Joint Committee on Housing, and I'm an affordable housing attorney. And on the topic of nonprofits, there's a real issue in housing in Massachusetts. The federal government's not funding public housing. The state of Massachusetts isn't funding public housing, or any housing for that matter. If you have a housing voucher, and you're lucky enough to have one, it doesn't even make a dent on the rents to be able to afford to live in Greater Boston. And so we have a unique issue that nonprofits can help us with, in Cambridge in particular. There will be a lot of private housing, affordable housing that will be coming off the market in the next 3 years. It'll be expiring. It'll lose its affordability restriction. And one thing I did last year is I worked on some legislation that would allow a nonprofit like Just a Start to purchase that property below market. And what that owner of the property that sells to Just a Start would be able to claim a tax credit to incentivize that owner to sell to Just a Start and preserve that housing as affordable in perpetuity. Rinch Towers, for example. One of the towers will be up for sale, and this is something that the nonprofit community is going to have to rally around to figure out how do we fund a deal with the city with Community Preservation Act money, city money, and also maybe take advantage of some of these state apparatuses where we can maybe access an alternative agreement with a nonprofit. Second, we hear from people facing eviction all the time in my office. What do? We send them to a nonprofit, have them do a housing search, figure out, get a case manager, and figure out what the exact circumstances are and how we move them through the system to get housing and become stable again. And the other thing, too, is Dennis Carlona mentioned the tenant right of first refusal. That's some legislation that I'm working on right now in my office. The great part about that is that if tenants come together and want to purchase a property, they can go to a nonprofit to do the complicated financing of that deal. And so they can assign their right to that nonprofit to help them along the way so they can come together and purchase that property and keep it affordable so families can stay in the city. Because it's about housing production, but it's also about preserving our community and the diversity that we have and the people we have in the city already. Sean Tierney.
What, did everybody go or no? Yeah. Yeah. Next group, and I hope I have Dennis Carlone, Jeff Santos, Nadia Okamoto, and Tim Toomey. And Jeff went to, okay, I was going to ask that. Thank you. Okay, I take that back. Denise Simmons and Mark McGovern. That's the 5 there.
All right, this is a real-life question. In September, the owner of Fresh Pond Apartments, Rick Henkin, met with the tenants to tell them what his plans are for the property when the affordability restrictions end in 2020. Mr. Henkin said, when we get to the end of 2020, in theory, we could convert to a market rate community. At the same time, he reassured tenants that the property had not been sold to Harvard, which is the rumor, and that he could see no circumstance where he would sell. The good news is that 338 of the 504 units at Fresh Pond, they're subsidized by a project-based Section 8 contract with HUD, and the owner says he will renew that. The critical issue is keeping affordability for the 166 families who do not have a project-based Section 8. The owner wants to mark up these so-called Beamer units to market. There are about 26 families at Fresh Pond that have a tenant-based voucher from the Cambridge Housing Authority. Now, they wanted to know if their housing was safe.
Talk into the mic, please.
Okay. I'll just repeat that sentence. There are about 26 families at Fresh Pond who have a tenant-based voucher from the Cambridge Housing Authority, and they wanted to know from Mr. Henkin if their housing was safe. He said, I can't make you leave as long as the Housing Authority pays market rent. I won't throw you out if the rent is $200 or $300 less than market, but if there's a $1,000 gap, well, I have investors. There is a $1,000 gap between the Beamer rents and market rents. Now, the challenge from the owner's point of view is figuring out a way to get the city to contribute to reduce rents for tenants who are making a low or moderate income. And he raised this key question. What is the will of the city to protect those people? So would you advocate for maintaining the same level of affordability at Fresh Pond? And how would you propose that the city pay for it every year? And should the city issue a housing bond?
This is one of the most pressing issues that we're facing right now. We talked, I think Sean had mentioned about preservation of affordable housing. We have to create more affordable housing, but if we lose what we have, we're in trouble. I have been out to Fresh Pond Apartments many times, met with residents there, and I think this is really scary because the owner knows that he has us over a barrel. He knows that this is expiring. He knows that we can't let it expire, and so he's got the cards, and that's frightening. So one of the things I've actually, and Mayor Simmons has talked about this, and we are co-chairs of the Housing Committee, is can the city create what we were calling a gap voucher, which is where the ceiling of Section 8 ends and where the floor of market rent begins, and how can the city help fill that gap? We have talked about a millionaire's tax, taxing people who buy property that is over $1.5 million, $2 million. We could use that money and earmark that money for that program. But what's happening at Fresh Pond Apartments is really terrifying. I have been working, I'm also the chair of the Finance Committee. I've had many conversations with the city manager about this, with the mayor about this. We understand the urgency of this. We are completely committed to making sure that those people are protected, and we will do whatever we can. This is why last night when we passed the Volpe petition, $26 million going to the Affordable Housing Trust. right? This is what we need. We need to continue to squeeze developers for as much as we can to contribute money to the Affordable Housing Trust so that we can then use that money to create and preserve more affordable housing. So this is an issue that has been on our radar for a long time. It is very serious, but we are committed, and I am absolutely committed to keeping those people in their homes.
Thank you, Mark. As Mark said earlier, we chair the Housing Subcommittee together, and we have spent the last 4 years working on issues of housing. And why this question is particularly important is one of the things that we did last year was we worked hard to increase the linkage fee. The linkage fee is the amount that developers pay when they build a building. Now, that had not been raised for several years. And what the work that we did through the Housing Committee, and several of the members of the Housing Committee are here with me on tonight, is we labored long. We agreed, we disagreed, but we ended up voting on a formula that would not only increase the linkage fee then, but would automatically increase the linkage fee over the next several years. What does that mean? That money goes into the Affordable Housing Trust, and it gives us the ability to try to support and preserve housing, particularly the housing buildings like 362, 364 Ridge Ave, which are expiring use buildings, and we're going to continue to do that. What's wonderful, why I want to continue on the council, why I need your number one vote to continue on the council, is because this is what we do. Mark has been, and I suspect Tim and a number of other people have been to 364, 362 Ridge Avenue, because part of the work is just holding people's hands. Just letting them know that we're not going to leave them out in the cold, letting them know that this fight is not their fight, it's our fight.
Hi, as the saying goes, I'm still Dennis Carlone. We can't just rely on developer money to solve this. This is ridiculous. We're the wealthiest city in Massachusetts. We have over $200 million in the bank for a rainy day. It's raining outside. It's a rainy day. There was no budget line item in our budget for the last 15 plus years for affordable housing. We use the surtax and grants, but we have a huge budget every year, no money. We finally got it. I kept pushing for it and had the support of the fellow councilors. It's only $2.8 million. We're going to double it next year. Great. I hope we keep doubling it. We're talking about 0.5% of the budget on the budget line items is for affordable housing. City's got to put up. We have the money. We have the lowest taxes in the state. If we want it, we can afford it. The linkage fee study said we could bill $24 a square foot to developers, and we actually ended up doing about half of that, a little more than half of it. We could raise that again in a few years. We have to be more aggressive. We have to not only just say it's number one, is do it. The feds used to pay a lot of money for housing. The state used to pay a lot of money. It's now on our shoulders. I'm for doing everything we can. It's one of the main reasons I ran. Thank you very much.
I think what's exciting about hearing everyone answer these questions about housing affordability is that you can all hear that we all care about this deeply, and it's at the top of our priority list. And so I think that if we were to be elected, however that is, I hope I'm included in that. I think that at the beginning of this next term, I think it is the City Council sitting down and saying, we all care about housing affordability. We all campaigned with that being our priority. Now let's actually make that our priority as an overall City Council. Let's collaborate to push forward these policies that are going to preserve and build affordable housing as we are saying we will now. And I think that one of the things we really have to make sure of in the next few months following November 7th is making sure that we're holding ourselves accountable for doing just that. I don't want to repeat what was said, but I do very much support the need to preserve the housing here, push for actually implementing solutions from the Affordable Housing Trust, wanting to fight for gap vouchers to be able to support families as they're having to move out if that has to happen. And I also think that another thing that we want to be exploring is alternative methods of pushing for more housing affordability, whether that be through housing co-ops and different options that we haven't explored yet, but other cities are making work, and I think that that's something I really want to be pushing forward, are these innovative and unique solutions that Cambridge should be exploring as well.
Well, as someone who worked on the city and state level in preserving expiring use buildings throughout the Commonwealth for the past 24 years, I'm very proud of my record. I'm very proud to have worked with the staff and the board members, especially of CEOC, who were at the forefront of fighting to make sure that those buildings were preserved. And they are owned and still occupied by either homeowners rehab, Justice Start, CASCAP. And that took a lot of work on the city and state level to accomplish that. So there are hundreds of residents who are still in those units, in affordable units today, because of the efforts of many people that are sponsoring this forum today. So my hats are off to you for your advocacy at what you did at the city and the state level. But it's important that we continue to do that. Mark had mentioned about the millionaire's tax. Well, I guess you could say there's two millionaire tax coming up. I proposed recently a transfer fee on properties, commercial, residential, and institutional, that are sold at a certain 5% over, I think, $5 million, would generate one condo was sold for $700 million. So do the math on how much that would go towards affordable housing. The other millionaire's tax that hopefully we'll be voting on in next November, and I worked with, at the time, Sean Turney was the attorney at the Committee of Revenue, which I was a member of, which voted out that to be on the ballot so that any individual whose income is $1 million or more a year pays 4% a year additional in income taxes, which would generate, I think, between $1 and $2 billion. So that's thinking out of the box. That's how we have to make this work, because the state and the federal governments, as they are comprised now, are not going to do it for us.
I am a member of the Affordable Housing Trust. I just want to point out that the city manager is the managing trustee, and the issue of a housing bond has been raised, and so far he has said no. So think about the role that a housing bond could play. I mean, people ate up those mini bonds in seconds, right? It was a very popular idea. I would love for this to come out of this forum, that people start backing that idea of doing a housing bond. That's my 2 cents. And the trust hates the idea of a gap rental subsidy. So you will have to sell the trust on that idea. Okay. All right. Another housing.
Okay. Alana, Jan Devereaux, Adrienne Musgrave, Quinn Zondervan, and I think that's a 4 group, and the next is a 4 group. And I think that everybody would have gone twice.
Are we missing someone? Is that's the whole crew? Okay. All right. All right. You're gonna.
Who hasn't gone twice yet? Yeah, right. 1, 2, 3. I know. Sambul, Brian, Ron Benjamin, and Greg Laurie, right? You all have to go, right?
Ron's gone twice.
I've done once.
Well, why don't you get in this?
Yeah.
Together, that makes 5.
Okay. This is another real life question. And you're going to get a cheat sheet after this. Okay, under the tenant selection preference policies for the city's inclusionary housing program, an applicant household that qualifies for a residency preference gets 4 points. A household with at least 1 child under 6 gets 2 points. A household with at least 1 child under 18 gets 1 point. Now, next year, there's going to be a public review of the draft regs for the inclusionary program, including the preference policies and the priority point system. Now, would you change the current preferences for families? Is 6 years old, is that the appropriate age for advantaging families with younger children? Should families who are homeless or at risk of becoming homeless go to the top of the list? And would you support the Housing Authority creating a special issuance of vouchers targeted to families with young children? That's something the Seattle Housing Authority is doing. So here's your cheat sheet. Everybody up?
Just to be sure, you're asking 4 questions at once?
Well, the focus really is on families with young children, okay? Because I'm giving you the current policies, and we are looking at that. So put your thinking caps on. It's not easy. It is not an easy question. It's the housing system sorts people out in terms of deservingness, and that's what we're going to have to reckon with. The council, the trust, yes. So please.
I'll go ahead and start. This is a really difficult question, and I haven't had a lot of opportunity to really think about this before I... Hello, my name is Alana Mallon. This is a difficult question. I haven't had a lot of time to think about this. I do know about the point system. I didn't realize that it was coming up for review. One of the things that you guys put in our folders was that domestic violence victims are most likely to be... I forget what the percentage was, but 22% to 57% of women who are homeless were victims of domestic violence. So I would think that for us to combat this issue for domestic violence victims, we would have to add maybe a point system in for them, because we have to create pathways for our gender-based violence victims and our domestic violence victims to have a pathway out. Oftentimes, we are making it very difficult for them, and I think 80% of women said that the reason that they didn't leave was because there was not an opportunity for them to have affordable housing. This is something that I feel very strongly about. I do think that our point system do need to be reviewed so that there can be some gradations in there. I think just having 6 years old or 18 years old is really difficult when you're thinking about what kind of trouble are they in at home, and what we need to do as a community to wrap our arms around families and women who are trying to escape abusive relationships.
Lana, I think that's a really good point about where are we focused on the need. And I think the other thing when we think about children in particular is are we taking kids out of a school system and putting them into another community so that their whole lives are uprooted? And so having that kid focused and the residency focused is a really critical piece here, because we know that there are families here who are going to become homeless in another community who are here where this impacts them as well. And so if the residency piece is part of it, you could have someone who would qualify but would then be sort of penalized under this new system. I think what is really important to consider is this question right now, which we need to keep our focus and funding in the places that really matter. These are really extraordinarily hard questions, not just about the logistics, but there's a huge ethical and moral piece here as well. When we are giving slots away and the wait list is practically infinite, there is, cities are playing God and playing opportunity in so many ways. And I really would hope that so many more of our community members would be engaged in this discussion. And this could be the top priority of our city, because we know that the opportunity of living here in Cambridge is so much higher than almost anywhere else. And in this country, when where you grow up and the zip code in which you grow up so much defines your future, bringing in more kids here is going to be critical. And making sure that we're incentivizing our builders to build more family-size units is also critical. So the other piece is if we add more families, which should be our #1 goal here in Cambridge, because the opportunity is so high for kids, we're going to have to work a lot harder to make sure that our developers are building family units, because that line is just going to get so much longer.
Quentin Zondervan, this is indeed a very difficult question, and I would want to see the data on how the families and applicants are currently being allocated, and what that does to the diversity of people who are eligible for this program. Because, just given this information, it's hard to say what the correct allocation would or wouldn't be. I also want to add on to what Adrian said, that with a very long wait list, we also have to look at that, because if we prioritize people based on, for example, they're about to become homeless, but there's a huge wait list, then people who have families with children wouldn't be able to get housing either. So I think it is a very complicated puzzle, and we have to look at other programs besides just this one. There might be other kinds of emergency housing that we could provide, or temporary housing for people who are in acute needs. So I think we have to look at the whole picture, look at the data, and understand how we can improve these programs.
I'm Samuel Gebru again. So your question is, it's a difficult one, because who are we, or who is anybody to rank who is more deserving of housing? It's a very challenging question, and I don't think there's a perfect solution. And whatever the council decides on, whatever the Affordable Housing Trust recommends, is going to be imperfect, in my opinion, just by default. But what I would venture to say is, those who are most vulnerable should always receive the priority. That includes single mothers with children, that includes victims of all kinds of violence and abuse, and that also includes those who are either currently homeless or in danger of being homeless. So that's who I would first venture off to. Having said that, though, I do think it's the city's obligation to take care of those who are here first, or rather who already live in the city. And so I think we do need to think very seriously about the preferences that goes to current residents. I know that within the Cambridge Housing Authority, 40% of those voucher holders do not live in Cambridge anymore because they can't find housing in the city. So that's an issue. The waiting list, I believe, is 13,000 people long. That's scary. But also, to Adrian's point, we do need more family housing. I believe in the Affordable Housing Trust's report from last year, it said out of the available affordable housing stock in Cambridge, 4% of those units are 3-bedroom and above. That's appalling. And that's something that we need to focus on as well. So whether that is the city or the Cambridge Housing Authority or the private developers and the nonprofits, of course, working together to figure out how is it that we can make sure that we're housing families, because that is a population of our city that is quickly eroding.
Thanks, everyone. I'm still Jan, as Dennis said. I think I would go all Craig Kelly on us and talk as Quentin did about data. So before, I remember that this conversation came up during this term when we were in the process of updating our inclusionary zoning, and we talked about what we would also look at as part of regulations. And so, the first question is, would you change the current preferences? Well, anytime you change a current program, you better have a really good reason for it, or the people who have been relying on those preferences are not going to be happy. So I would want to know how the current program is working first, who it's not working for, and whether there's an overriding need to change it before I did that. Is 6 the appropriate age? I'm assuming that if we were going to change the appropriate age, it would be younger, and I would note that the cost of childcare for children who are of preschool age, and 6 is first grade as far as I know, so I don't know whether it's 3 or 4 or whether it's infants. Should families who are homeless or at risk of becoming homeless go to the top of the list? I would say families with young children, in particular families with school-age children who are homeless, should definitely have a priority. I believe we already have a priority for emergency housing, correct? So I don't know the points for it, but I believe that already is a top priority, and particularly for abuse. And would I support creating special vouchers targeted to families with young children? Why not? I thought the idea in the last conversation about GAP vouchers was great. I think some creative financing would be great. But again, I would like, as a good counselor, I would want to hear public comment. I would want to hear reports from staff. I would want to hear what my colleagues have to say. And I think it would take probably more than 12 minutes to figure it out. Thanks.
Just as a one follow-up, in some ways the question is mute if we don't build more housing. We're at a critical time where the wait lists are infinite and the need is high and income inequality is growing and we have a hollowing out of the middle class. And so we really do need to embrace a little bit more density and a little bit more height all across the city so that we can have economically and racially diverse communities and neighborhoods and so that more people can have access to living here in Cambridge, and so we can do our part to create opportunity for so many more. Since about 2015...
I'm sorry, it's getting later and I don't want people to be, but thank you for adding that in. We have one more group, and I think it should be Greg, Ron Benjamin, Symbol, and Brian Sutton. Is that correct? Has anybody not gone twice? Does anybody want to go home? It's cold in here because I get hot, so I'm the boss. Okay. So this is the last question. I don't think we did this one. Do you think that the city councilors can play a role in addressing and preventing domestic and sexual violence? And if yes, please describe your understanding of that role, and if not, why not?
Hi everyone, Sambal Siddiqui. So something, every nonprofit faces funding problems. I've had experience where one of the organizations that I've served on, we lost a $20,000 grant. So then the board had to figure out how do we raise that money. Organizations like Transition House, organizations that are helping vulnerable populations, will always be facing budget crises. The way I think the city council can play a role is stepping in. One of the ways we do that is by allocating community development block grants that are available through HUD. Those are still available right now. The new budget comes, there could be cuts. So that's where the city has to prioritize funding these organizations and making sure they are continuing to offer these such vital services to our most vulnerable. So that's, I think, the number one role that the city of Cambridge can play. The Transition House has done an amazing job of highlighting client outcomes and showing how important funding is and how critical it is to the need. So, really that as a city council would be my priority. And we have that information from the community needs assessment that was done. So we have to really continue to work with the Cambridge Nonprofit Coalition, work with these innovative nonprofits, and figure out if there is a program that is being cut, where can we step in and help fill that gap.
Ron, I think you've gone twice already, and the time is running, so I'm going to hold you, and I'll let you do your closing statement first, but this way we'll get through this round, and then we'll do the closing, and people can maybe get 5 minutes early out of here. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Brian Sutton. So this is a tough thing, right? I mean, it's still an ongoing issue, even though there's been a lot of support. So we look at the things that have been successful, support groups, outreach groups. There's definitive data that housing is plays a tremendous part in just helping people with that economic aspect of their lives will have an impact. But I do see the role of the city council as engagement and outreach to every single community in Cambridge, and in this community also. It's hard for me to talk to because I don't specifically have experience in this, but I mean, that just means that my approach to this is to gather people who do, gather experts that are smarter in this than I am, and obviously it's important. I mean, like I said, it's a natural human characteristic to really want to help everybody, help every individual in Isle. That is the goal of the city council, to do that to the best of their ability. But my name is Brian Sutton. Thank you for staying so late. You guys are awesome.
Can you repeat the question again, so we know exactly what we're talking about?
Do you think this city councilors can play a role in addressing and preventing domestic and sexual violence? And if yes, please describe your understanding of that role.
Well, the answer would be yes.
Okay, then I don't have to ask.
You know, and whatever we can do, we have to do it. But it also comes from drinking, not having a job, being stressed out. And there has to be outreach, people going into homes, communities. You can see it within the children when they go to school, if they're, not properly functioning right. You can, some way you have to investigate it and try to help the families through the problems that you just finished describing. I mean, we're going through stressful times right now. So many families, mothers and children come first. And then it's the grandparents. We have to help everybody. Everybody has to be on the lookout for everything to help everybody. We need food, we need jobs, we need education. And so, maybe we should bring a lot of people into City Hall, mothers and fathers, and talk to them. You can talk to all these kids and mothers and fathers, one group after another group after another group, and check out our population, what's going on. And I'm sure that the police department knows everybody in the city of Cambridge. Every single person, they probably know everybody. So everybody's on the lookout for the issues that you're describing, and then they'll address those issues. So I support just helping people. And my name is gregmaury.com.
Okay, we're going to do, and it's just going to work, we're going to do 1 minute. Everybody gets a minute. Ron, you're already there. You might as well just take the microphone, and it's your lucky day. We're going this way. I just want to say thank you all for being here. Thank you all for being here. And I guess from CEOC's perspective, and you've all said it, but government now more than ever has to play a role in what's going on. And so the fact that you've all engaged in this effort, you deserve a great thank you from all of us, because I wouldn't want the schedule you've all had for the past so many weeks. So Ron, go ahead in 1 minute. Thank you.
What I will do as a council is to partner with all the institutions that represent the city. One is the police. Make sure the police knows what's going on, and they knows how to contact the police and deal with domestic violence. Also, the church should be involved more in dealing with that. But in my closing statement, it's very simple. November 7th is a serious matter. Serious matter. It's no joke. You want a leader that knows who you are and knows what you want. If you're a senior, I am the only one that went to medical school. I know who you are. I know what you need. Okay? It's very simple. Vote for me, Ronald Benjamin. We're lucky this year. It's going to be very simple. You see the name Benjamin, you get the marker, you click number 1. That's simple. All right, thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dennis Carlone. Very frankly, I've been blessed. My parents both were brought up in broken, abusive homes. My mother headed the family when she was 15 years old. She brought up her younger brother and sisters. And I knew none of that until I was about 12 when they informed us. But the one thing that they told us was, you have to go to school, you have to look at the bright side of life, and you have to help people. And that's what I've done. I'm a public architect and urban designer by training. I've worked with 15 different neighborhood groups in the last 4 years to work on their issues, not my issues. And I've always promoted what is best for the average person, because I came from that. I came and I ended up at Harvard in graduate school. So I feel blessed, and I believe I have to share that, and I continue to do that. Thank you.
Hi folks, my name is Olivia D'Ambrosio. I mentioned in the last round that you can't hear me? Change mics. All right, is that better? Great, thank you so much. My name is Olivia D'Ambrosio. I mentioned in the last round that I'm the only arts-focused candidate, and I'd like to just expound upon that a little bit more. I have training both as a professional artist and in running my nonprofit, and as a result, I have a very strong mix of soft skills and hard skills. I am very practiced in creative thinking, listening, and public speaking. And I am also very practiced now in managing resources and managing people. Artists have real skills, I have real skills, and I can be a real city councilor. To tell you more just about my background otherwise, I just bought a home in Porter Square. It's 344 square feet. I used to rent a studio in Kendall, so I've lived in both neighborhoods, and I've had the experience of both being a renter and a homeowner. And I'm LGBTQ. My girlfriend's name is Rachel, and she's a public elementary school principal in Central Mass. And we have a dog named Rusty. Thank you.
Hi. Here, is that, I don't know. Hello?
Yeah.
Is it working? Okay, I couldn't hear it. Okay, thanks everyone for coming, and thanks to the organizers. I think this forum is unique in its format, and I think it's also uniquely challenging, because the issues that we discussed tonight do not have any easy answers. And so I think you had a lot of smart people at the table, and I think you realized that no single one of us has all the answers to these questions. And so that leads me to the experts in the room, the leaders of nonprofits who are working in the community, the people who are receiving the services or asking for the services or suggesting the services. All of these people need to be able to work together and to listen to each other, and that's part of the role of the council, is to bring the people together, to hold hearings. Hearings are to listen, as Olivia has reminded us over and over again. We cannot do this alone. We cannot do this in a policy silo, on paper, in the abstract. These are human problems, and they are tough. So I really look forward to the opportunity to keep learning from people, from all of you, and to do my best to try to make some headway. Thank you.
Thank you, CEOC, for organizing this. I actually think that this is probably the most diverse audience that we've had in terms of candidate forums this year, and I've been to, I think, all of them. So I do want to commend you. But that also speaks to the problems that we face in Cambridge. When it comes to economic inequality, when it comes to poverty, that transcends race, it transcends gender, it transcends family, economic status, whatever. I mean, it really impacts everybody. And that speaks to the audience that's here tonight. I'm running for city council because I believe that we can build an inclusive Cambridge by prioritizing social mobility. And that is how you fight poverty. You ensure that people have the resources, access, and opportunities that they need to succeed. Economic inequality and affordable housing are the biggest issues in our city, and I think that we can accomplish them together if we work with you in the nonprofit sector, if we listen to the residents of Cambridge, and if we make sure that we elect city councilors who understand the 13 neighborhoods of this city and the different issues that are impacting them. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yeah. Leadership, passion, and experience. That's what I'm running for city council on. This is a record that has been built over nearly 20 years of being an activist and an elected official in the city. For me, I think I'm uniquely qualified to serve you as your next city councilor. My city experience, my work at the State House, I work here at the Public Health Department doing health disparities work with some great people, working in the youth center as a youth worker. I believe that makes me uniquely qualified to represent you on the city council. And I want you to understand that I say this with the most passion that I have. I'm just a kid from Cambridge looking to accept, if you will help me, the profound responsibility of serving the city I love. I grew up here in public housing. I understand what it is to struggle. And I think it's high time that City Hall represents the values and the people that it should represent. And I think I represent all of your values, and I will take that profound responsibility seriously in City Hall. Elections have consequences. Please do not sit out this election. It's an important election. You're going to have 3 new city councilors. I hope that you choose me as one of them. Thank you for your time, and I appreciate the questions in CEOC. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I do want to say thank you to CEOC, the Transition House, and the YWCA for putting this forum together tonight. I always say I'm a first-time candidate for Cambridge City Council, but I'm not new to civic action and community engagement here in Cambridge. As the former education liaison to Mayor David Myer, I spent 2 years in City Hall gaining municipal government experience. As the founder of the Cambridge Weekend Backpack Program, which sends food home with 500 Cambridge Public School students each and every weekend, I have a proven track record of taking concrete action that produces results. And as the current program director at Food for Free, working on hunger and food access work, I work with our most vulnerable communities each and every day. 30% of our city council is going to be new in January, and I am asking for your #1 vote because I have experience in finding and filling gaps. I've shown that I have a skilled collaborator that can bring multiple stakeholders to the table to solve problems. I'm asking for your #1 vote. I hope you consider me on November 7th so I can continue working with passion for this community and its residents every day. Thank you.
Thank you. Whoa. I got the good one. Yes.
Trick Mike.
Sorry. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I see a lot of familiar faces in the audience, and you're familiar to me, some of you, because you run nonprofits, and I've worked with you, not just as a city councilor, but as a social worker in this community for 25 years. Many of you are also familiar to me because you've come to see me in some of your most vulnerable times. And I have stood by you, and I have held your hand, and I have helped you navigate very confusing and sometimes overwhelming systems. Working for social and economic justice isn't something that I came to as a politician. It's been my life's work. Someone told me that the way they decide who earns their #1 vote isn't based on who they would like to see added to the council, but who the council can't afford to lose. We have a lot of talent up here, but when it comes to working for social and economic justice, for understanding how the policies we pass impact the people we serve, nobody has my years of experience and my proven track record. So if social and economic justice is your issue, I need your #1 vote on November 7th. I am not safe in this election, despite the whisper campaign that's going on saying that I am. If you don't want to lose the only social worker on the city council, vote Mark McGovern #1, November 7th.
Social workers are very important. With all the issues that we got going on with food and housing and jobs, particularly our elderly as well. Our elderly is unbelievable. We need to help them as well. But our youth, those are our vulnerable citizens, elderly and our youth. Our youth can't not get jobs. Our youth are in jail. It's cheaper to put them to work. So I must tell you that. We're going to get an audit going on in the city of Cambridge. How many people are working on these construction jobs? And we demand our jobs. You know, this is the city of House Speaker Tip O'Neill, the greatest labor union person in the world. Came from Fairfield Street. My uncle wrote the Bill of Rights. We want our jobs. And we're going to be working with the city manager, the mayors, the congressman, the governor, Myer here. We want our jobs. Our kids need to go to work. We have more kids in jail than are working. It doesn't make sense. GregMorey.com.
Hi, my name's Adrienne Musgrave, and I believe, like many of you and like the CEOC, the government's job is to create economic opportunity for everyone in this city. That's what got me into this race and why I'm running right now. This is the biggest issue that we have in our country, with rising inequality and the fact that not everyone has access to the same level of resources. I feel like here in Cambridge, we have a unique role to play in providing economic opportunity for everyone. How many cities have 2 world-class universities, a biotech hub of the world and other tech companies, a very well-off city government, great city staff, and residents who care? When I talk to families about some of the issues that we deal with, it is not uncommon for them to say, I would pay more if it meant that someone else had a better chance at success. I think this should be our number one focus and priority over the next couple years. And as I've been running, I have seen that it has not been. And so I hope that when people think about what the number one issues are, what we talked about here are them. Please go to my website and look at more of the ideas that I have for what we can do to make a difference. We've talked about a lot of them here, and you can see more about what I've done research on and what I really believe in. Tomorrow there's a webinar on children's savings account sponsored by Prosperity Now. This is something that I know Alana has mentioned, and is something that we could talk about more. We have people who are up here who are doing the research and who know these issues intimately, and that's who we need fighting and having these conversations in the meetings. Thank you very much.
Thank you everyone for being here. I know it's getting late, so thank you for spending your evening with us. Cambridge means a lot to me for very unique reasons. I think unlike many of the candidates here, I was born in New York City, but I grew up experiencing domestic violence and housing instability. But regardless of what my family was going through, Cambridge was a safe place my family would return to, because my godparents have lived here and they're sort of the extent of my extended family. This was literally a home, even in times when my family didn't have one or didn't feel like we had a safe home to go back to. And that concept of home is why I'm running. I'm running to protect home for all residents, regardless of their race, their religion, their socioeconomic status, where they're from, or how long they've been here. I think the experience of being housing unstable, or the experience of what it's like to be a young person working multiple jobs, trying to support a family, knowing what it's like to be part of that number of the 40% single mom living in poverty, that experience and perspective is missing from city council. I'm running in a district where over 35% of the demographic is under the age of 25, and over 34% of the adult population is enrolled in the university, but we haven't had that youth representation on council. And so by running and by hopefully earning a spot on council, I would not only be bringing this unprecedented perspective, but also this unprecedented amount of representation for a demographic that hasn't had a seat at the table before. I hope you vote for me, number 1 or number 2. My name is Nadia Okamoto.
Excuse me, but I can't believe it, but we're too loud. Yeah. So we've asked for a change in the microphone.
How's this? Can you hear me? Great. I know. Hey everyone, my name is Sambul Siddiqui. Thank you so much for coming. I'm running for city council because I have the lived experience and the professional experience to be a member of this city council. Lived experience, what do I mean by that? Growing up in the Ringe Towers, growing up in Roosevelt Towers, you know, people have said, wow, you're an attorney? How'd you do that? I get a lot of good for you, good for you. They're so shocked that having grown up low income, that I've achieved what I've achieved. I don't want that to be the case. I want to make sure that our students of any income, our adults, are achieving as best as they can. And I will be a strong advocate for that. And now, as a legal aid attorney, I provide free legal services to low income and the elderly. So, day one, I am going to be your advocate. I'm someone who has experience with listening, with problem solving, for really having that hands-on constituent services. And that's what we need to see more of. We need people who represent our community, who have the lived experiences in our community. So I would love to chat. My platform is available on my website, votestumble.com. I have palm cards as well. And I would love to earn your number 1 vote. Thank you.
Merci, gracias, and thank you for being here. I'm Denise Simmons, candidate for re-election, currently serving as your mayor. Cambridge is my hometown. I've lived here for all my life. My experience spans 30 years, first as the city's civil rights activist, 10 years on the school committee, and currently sitting on the city council serving as your mayor. I ask you for your #1 vote on Tuesday, November 7th, and here's why. Because I want to continue working for you and with you on issues that are important to all of us. Issues like housing, wage equity for women, safety for women and girls, opening the doors to city council to all, working on policy issues like sexual harassment and sexual assault, making sure Cambridge remains and stays a friendly, senior-friendly community, bringing in more populations into City Hall, like our interfaith community, working on the regional transportation roundtable, but most importantly, getting the city council and school committee to work collaboratively together. I can't do that without you. I need your #1 vote on Tuesday, November 7th.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you, CEOC, and the rest of the organizations that are here. My name is Jeff Santos. As I said, I was born in the 1960s, and I read about the war on poverty. How many times over the last dozen years, 20 years, we talked about poverty? It's important. Poverty rate in this city hasn't changed really in about 18 years. We need to do more. As Dennis Carlone said, we have a rainy day fund. We have a $156 million surplus. We need to do more. If we want to bring out the spirit that we had in the 1960s, when we were talking about the war on poverty, when we were talking about the idea of civil rights and Medicaid and Medicare, that's what we need to do. We need to bring that spirit back. And I tell you, I want to fight. I want to fight for you on issues from housing to transportation to small business. We can do this together. Go to santosforcitycouncil.com. I appreciate your #1 vote or #2. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Brian Sutton. So the Affordable House Trust, they do a great job with the pressures and what they have, the resources they have available to them. And I have 60 seconds, I'll cut to the chase. We live in a country with corrosive government corruption. And not only are they not helping with these issues we're talking about today, they are actively trying to make it harder for us. And we just can't put blinders onto that situation and pretend that those forces are not there. So what do? We need to start with civic engagement. I believe that there's nobody in this room any smarter than anyone else, and that's why it's important that everybody is heard, everyone gets their opinion, and I don't think it's good enough to just sit there and wait for people to show up to these events or hold meetings. We need to actively get the opinion of every single person in Cambridge, which sounds daunting, but it is possible, and I believe it's the job of the City Council. Next, we need to eliminate money from politics. That starts with publicly funded elections, and it works in Seattle, and it'll work here. My name's Brian Sutton. Thank you.
Hi, Sean Tierney, first-time candidate for City Council. And I'm running because I love this city. This city, in many ways, made me the person I am today. And it's many ways, it's the reason why I got into public service. My entire career, I've been working in public service. As Tim mentioned, I helped draft the Fair Share Amendment, which is going to help reduce income inequality by taxing millionaires at a higher rate. And we're going to invest that in education and infrastructure. I come with housing experience. I'm the affordable housing attorney at the state legislature, and I work on housing every day, and I have that experience. But I've been working on progressive issues my entire career. When I was in law school, I interned for the Lawyers Committee on Civil Rights, where I researched election law issues in the city of Boston. I taught high school and constitutional law at City on a Hill in Roxbury. And then after that, I worked at the Attorney General's office on foreclosure prevention. So I'm serious about service. It's something I've been doing my entire career. And I'm also serious about this community, and that's why I still volunteer at the high school today. And I meet people all the time who are from Cambridge and say, man, I can't believe you run for city council. That city's over. It's not the same. None of us can afford to be there. We can't raise our families there. And I'm running because I'm an optimist. And I have the skills I think that we can make to tackle these issues and make change. And that's why I'm running for city council.
Thank you to all who attended here this evening and to those who are watching at home. I do want to thank CEOC, the YWCA, Transitions House, and the Cambridge Nonprofit Coalition for providing us with this venue to share all of our ideas and our goals for the city. Many years ago, I was very proud to serve as a board member and treasurer of CEOC, and I know that being engaged with that board and the members and the staff, really instilled in me the value of public service and how we need one another. And so to CEOC, being part of that really meant a lot to me, and it inspired me to run for public office. I've been on the school committee, state representative, and city council. I maintained a district office at 550 Cambridge Street to provide constituent service. To me, that's the most important thing, so that people can come in to see me directly, whether it's bringing immigrants up to MAPS to help with citizenship, bring them to the multi-service center to help with the housing application. A lot of people don't know how to navigate the system. To me, that's the most important, is being there for people. I humbly request your number one vote, but most importantly, that you vote no matter who on November 7th. It is so important. This is a critical election for all of us.
Thanks again. I'm Gwen Volmar. I just want to make sure that we thank the gentleman standing behind me. This is not an easy job, and it's so, so important. This is what access looks like. Thank you. I am running for city council because I have been there, because I am there. I am living in the same apartment that I moved into 10 years ago when I was 22. I am the earner for my family. I got my graduate degree at night because I can't afford to take time off work to do studies. I have been married for 10 years and I don't have children because I cannot afford to live in Cambridge and have children. Every idea that I am talking about on my platform, from municipal broadband to direct city leasing, to safekeeping centers, to commercial condominiums, are all coming from real people from a real place. If you want someone in that room who is going to care about those people, then you put one of those people in the room. There needs to be someone there whose life is on hold until we figure this out, and that person is me. I am humbly asking for your vote, number 1, on November 7th. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Quentin Zondervan, and I came to this country as an immigrant. As I was a teenager, and as a family, we experienced poverty. We were escaping dictatorship and oppression when we came to the United States. I've experienced domestic violence and witnessed it. And domestic abuse and sexual violence is almost always perpetrated by men. So those of us who are men need to take responsibility for our own behavior and for how we raise boys and young men. And having mentors available to them is extremely important in accomplishing that goal. I came to this city 25 years ago to study at MIT, and I've been actively involved in the community from day one. I volunteered my spare time in Dorchester working with middle-aged middle school boys who are at risk. I volunteered at the Cambridge School Volunteer Program that Sumbul mentioned as a net pal when I was working as a professional in Kendall Square. I'm a nonprofit leader in Cambridge on climate justice issues. I run Green Cambridge. I have the most experience of the challengers in making policy in the city of Cambridge, working with the community, with the city council and city staff on making policy. VoteQuinton.com to learn more. Thank you very much.
I want to just appreciate that you all stayed the whole time, and we almost did it at 8:30, but, and again, there's no reason, we got enough choices up here, there's no reason to not be out on November 7th. Thank you all.